Welcome back to the Bold Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this inspiring journey of personal growth and leadership. Together with my guests, we'll dive into transformational stories, uncovering how small, intentional changes can create massive positive results in your life. From overcoming challenges and setting impactful goals to building lasting habits and living with confidence, health, and positivity, we'll explore it all. And if you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock the best version of yourself, then let's spark that transformation today. Today on the Bolt Podcast, I'm excited to welcome Peter Ray, the founder of Better Humans, Better Performance, a nonprofit dedicated to helping individuals and teams thrive under pressure while guided by character and integrity. Peter brings a wealth of experience as the former Vice President of Integrity and Ethics at Parker Hannifin and as Professor of Business at Baldwin Wallace University. He has authored multiple influential publications, including Better Humans, Better Performance, and Leading with Integrity. His career spans over 2 decades, combining leadership, ethics, and entrepreneurial insight, and he is passionate about creating lasting social and economic value through virtuous leadership. He holds a PhD from the University of Akron, MA from Bowling Green State University, a BS from Ohio University. He has completed postdoctoral studies in international marketing and business, marketing strategy, and entrepreneurship at the University of South Carolina, Memphis University, Carnegie Mellon, Duke, and MIT. Listeners, get ready for an educational episode on virtues and leadership, and get out your notepads. Peter, welcome to the Bold Podcast, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Todd. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, thank you for giving us a little bit of your time today. I do want to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Scott J. Allen. Thank you, Scott, for making the introduction. Scott's such a great guy. You know, Peter, the introduction, that's quite an introduction. And to be honest, I had a heck of a time paring this down. ChatGPT wanted to cut a lot of that out. And, I wanted to give you the respect of this long history that you've had, decades of experience in leadership and your educational background. So I wanted our audience to really get a sense of your background and who you are and what you've accomplished. So I have a lot of respect for you and what you're doing. And I'm excited about this conversation today.
Me too.
So I want to start off by this one phrase that you mentioned in your book. When we get better at who we are, we get better at what we do. And that has been your life's work in some ways. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. I think that what's interesting, and I don't think I understood this till I started digging into the research and then applying it in companies. But I think what gets understated is character defined by virtue is a huge performance amplifier. So that gets at that first part of the statement. When we get better at who we are by practicing virtue. And the word virtue means excellence. And it's not a virtue until I act. So that's the amplifier to whatever competency I'm trying to develop.
Right. Yeah. And this is perfect because, my personal mission and the mission of this podcast, The Bolt, is to help people reimagine how they live, lead, and work, and to become the best version of themselves. I've been on a personal mission, and I continue to do the work, and you're a lifelong learner as well. And I assume you're continuing to do that work. We're all just trying to get 1% better every day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the theme of this episode is really better humans, better performance, simply put. And you've had a really long, impressive career. And we talked about your time, 12 years as Vice President of Integrity and Ethics at Parker Hannifin.
Right.
And this is a large corporation, Fortune 250, publicly owned, annual sales of, north of 20 billion, and 65,000 employees in 50 different countries. I mean, we're talking about a lot of humans, right, to be responsible for. So I'm really curious when I saw your title, this Vice President of Integrity and Ethics, is this something that is common in these very large corporations? And when you came into this role, was this role already there or was this created for you? And what was the impetus of creating this role? That's what I'd like to just learn a little
Right.
bit more about.
Yeah. So it had not been created before.
Okay.
And I think the way I would put it, and it's not common. I wish that it was common, but it's
Right.
not. It's
Okay.
more common actually in the military
Okay.
than you would find in corporations, which is odd because it's got a huge performance benefit.
Hmm.
So the catalyst for this that I think still relevant is the then chief financial officer at Parker was in an executive MBA class that I was teaching. And I was always wondering, why do organizations limit their definition of ethics to compliance, which means a set of rules?
Mm-hmm.
And you need rules. You can debate whether you got too many or too few, but zero is not the right answer. And not thinking about ethics as virtue, which is at least 3,000 years old, and it's got all kinds of performance benefits. So the CFO, I think this is still true today. He went to the CEO and said, I'm not sure more rules are going to keep us safer. And while we keep laying on more and more rules, we're burdening the 99% of people who come to work every day and do their job properly. And we're not expressing appropriate gratitude to them.
Hmm.
And it's not zero is not the right answer on rules. And you do need some form of compliance, just so I'm being clear. And if you're in a publicly owned company, you don't have any choice anyway. You're required to do it. But if you've got an ethical culture defined by virtue, at least trying to practice that, you both mitigate the risk of something going off the rails and you accelerate performance. So, in brief, that was the catalyst for it.
Okay. Interesting. So how did that benefit Parker when COVID came? So you had already implemented this several years before COVID, arguably one of the toughest times that we've all faced.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So here's the context is when everybody traveled a lot at Parker. I mean, I traveled all over the world, and that was normal. We spent at the time $160 million a month on travel, to give you a sense of this. And we're in 50 countries and 350 locations, so it's kind of a massive organization.
Right.
So you go a dead stop from all this travel to now you're going to try to run a Fortune 250 remote.
Mhm.
And so I pivoted fast with Zoom. And this answer is better to be lucky than good. That I had taken the Better Humans, Better Performance book and started to create e-learning modules.
Hmm.
And that went live in April of 2020, right when COVID hit. So it became a vehicle to pump in the practice of virtue into operations. And it enabled scale in ways that I couldn't achieve by traveling.
Right.
And I had done a lot of work around resilience of how do people become more resilient? What's the science behind that? And
Hmm.
PhD stands for permanent head damage, that you look at the world pre, post, control, treatment, randomization.
Right.
So these aren't personal opinions. Look, what's the research say?
Right.
So there's a lot of really interesting research on resilience because the
Hmm.
word gets used a lot, but becomes kind of a tagline rather than a science-based
Hmm.
approach to how is it learned.
Right.
So it wouldn't come as a surprise that became. I've done thousands of sessions on resilience. Thousands of people attending the resilience, and I'll stop with one story.
Okay.
That when the Ukraine war broke out, so that was not too far after COVID, I got contacted by our Eastern European colleagues, and especially Poland, that I don't know that it's widely known that Poland's population is about 40 million. 10 million Ukrainians became refugees in Poland. So imagine the percentage increase in your population overnight. And so the question was, how do the Poles, how do the Czechs, how do other Eastern European countries become more resilient? And it was very humbling because I made it very clear I'm sitting 6,000 miles from where you sit. I'm not on the border of a war. I've never experienced war. I don't know what you're going through. The best I can offer is here's the science behind this, and then you tell me whether it's useful and relevant. So it was a powerful experience on me, what I learned from people that I thought were rock stars, that if I was going through what they're going through, I might be in a corner somewhere in a fetal position. So you learn a lot from others as you do it. And that became kind of the punchline around how do you perform well despite uncertainty, despite pressure, despite stress? What's the science behind that? And it does come down to character, relationships, and purpose.
Wow. And so you did not intend the timing of you launching that, what that was already there, right? It wasn't
Right.
like you said,
That's
"Oh
called
gosh,
dumb luck.
that was the dumb luck." Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, good for you. I mean, that's awesome. And wow. So in your role at Parker, is there any what types of challenges did you face that you're able to talk about? You know, is there one in particular where this research and your model really came into play and you were able to put it in place and you're able to overcome some major obstacles?
Yeah, I'll offer two stories that perhaps answer your question. The first is when I got started. The endowed chair I held at Baldwin Wallace was in entrepreneurship. So I approached it like an internal startup that was funded. So I had spent 6 months interviewing hundreds of leaders
Mm,
about what their pain point was. And the what came out of it at a high level was all right, why are we doing this? Why is Parker going to make this investment into of not only character but virtue? And so I worked with the CFO. This is a financial argument. This was not an HR initiative, and it was protect the balance sheet. That our reputation and culture were the most important asset that we had. And so, like any asset, you need an on-purpose plan. That's the why. So people, okay, that makes sense. So what does this mean? Well, there's these seven classical virtues: trust, compassion, courage, justice, wisdom, temperance, and hope. And they're classical, which means they cut across time, they cut across borders. So we're in 50 countries, we can't be US centric. It's got to be universal. So okay, I get that. So how are you going to do it? So it very much got into how very fast of how do you scale this? And so now I'll fast forward. This is the reason for writing a couple of books when I was there. So there was content that could be scaled. And so I'm going to fast forward to right after COVID. I worked with our Asia Pacific team every month. This is the operations leadership team, all the folks that have P&L responsibility. As you can imagine, it's a massive footprint. It's India, China, Japan, Indonesia, Australia, you name it. And once a month, we would keep kind of putting in virtue, science of high performance. That's the intersection. That the science of high performance is really about the social aspects of it, and the most pro-social technology ever invented by humans is virtues. So to have an option to scale the virtues into such a big footprint, that was a big deal. And I created self-paced courses, which is still part of the nonprofit, where teams could learn about leadership or teamwork or coaching. It's a hybrid, so that you start with the team all together. Then there's modules they work on, then they come back together, modules they work on, and you check with the end. And so the punchline on this that we saw, I ran multiple studies when I was at Parker. So in between that start, the alpha and the omega that I described, we did experimental designs where you have a control group you do nothing with, a treatment group that you integrate the virtues into their daily operations. That's a really important point.
mhm.
It's integrated to what you're already going to do. And did pre and post tests. And what we discovered is that we got jumps in engagement of 10 to 20% year over year. That you're not going to get a fast, quick change, but
Mhm.
over 12 months. And it varied by, if it was a really strong team, they actually got the biggest jumps. If it was a dysfunctional team, it took longer, but they did get the jumps. And a lot of
Okay.
that was tied to the quality of leadership. So
Okay.
that's a long answer to your question, but hopefully that starts to get at it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did the dysfunctional group see the same amount, same percentage amount of increase?
They did, but it was slower.
It was just slower. Okay. So
Yeah, so that
year
was
and a
more
half.
18 months. Yeah, you got it. You nailed it. It
Okay.
was 18 months.
But still seeing the growth. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's interesting. Wow. This is much more than a book.
Yeah, I think that this is the piece, the business case for this is a layup. And I'm just surprised by how few businesses in particular are getting it. Military gets it.
Right.
But you think most there's lots of organizations that understand the importance of engagement, and there's 2 decades of research that shows, big surprise, the more engaged your people are, you get the kind of outcomes we're all interested in, whether that's business growth, customer satisfaction, operational excellence, turnover rates, all those kinds of outcomes.
Right.
So you say, all right, well, what's engagement? Well, engagement is discretionary effort, that you've got people that look around, they see what needs to be done, who do they need to work with, and they own it. Okay, well, then how does that happen? Well, it's largely about pro-social behavior. So engagement's not about extrinsic changes, where if I just pay you more, I get you to work harder. There's no evidence that that works.
Right. Right.
And that doesn't mean we shouldn't pay people fairly. It just doesn't mean I can get you to work harder.
Right.
It's the pro-social behavior that gets me to work harder, that when virtue is being practiced, I feel like I belong, I feel like I matter, I feel like I make a difference. And those three levers are, which are all the soft stuff, are the things that get you the kind of performance we're all interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, this is good stuff, Peter. So I just want to let our listeners know, like this is what we're talking about here. Peter's book, Better Humans, Better Performance. Incredible book, Peter. I have not made it all the way through for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a slow reader. And two, I'm a slow reader because I take a lot of notes. I treat this as a research project. I used to really burn through books. And I try to get through them and check it off and say, "Oh man, I got through another one." And then I realized less is more, and I really want to immerse myself in the book. And not blowing smoke here because you're on the show. This is a really incredible book. I have pages and pages of notes, and excited to get all the way through it. I would arguably say I'd put this on the top of books that need to be read by every leader, with Stephen Covey and John Maxwell and James Clear, at least in my opinion, those staple books. And I'm going to get a copy of this for all of my leadership team. And I would encourage our listeners to at least read about the book and consider buying the book. So let's just dig into this book. Even I feel like that's what we've been talking about. But although, as you said, this is much more than a book. And in fact, I think what you're trying to do, or what you've done and what you're trying to build on, is a movement. And it's funny because it's going back to very simple principles, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's interesting, Peter, what I've found in my coaching and my speaking and what I talk about, which is mainly focused on the power of positivity and cultivating a growth mindset. There are so many techniques that are very basic, and most people just don't practice them because they are so obvious.
Right.
And they're free. They take literally 3 to 5 minutes to start to build a habit. So oftentimes we just need a reminder to get back to the basics. Almost like, I don't know if you remember, Peter, back in the day where they would have those PSA School of Rock. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, me too.
And I think we just kind of need that in our company newsletters, if you will. Let's just get back to the basics. So yeah, incredible book, and I want to dig into it. Let's start with this, Peter. So I'm going through this, and I read this quote from the poet Rumi,
Hmm.
A jackass attached to angel wings.
Hmm.
Talk about you mentioned this quite a few times in the book, so obviously this had some influence on you and it resonated with you. Why did you include this and just tell our audience about it? This was new to me, so I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'll start with the quote, then I'll give some context for it. So, Rumi's take, he's a 12th century Sufi poet, and his description of humans is they're jackasses attached to angel wings. So the point is, there's a jackass in every one of us. We'd like to make it a little bit smaller, but you're not going to go to zero. So these virtues are aspirational. It's not possible to be perfect. But we are capable of being good, and most humans tip towards trying to do the right thing for the right reasons in the right way. But the hard part is making it a habit. And so the practice, I think Rumi's takeaway is you practice these virtues with humility because no one's earned the right to break out their moral yardstick and start measuring other people.
Mhm.
And we tend to be better at seeing other people's flaws and not as good about seeing our own flaws.
Yes.
So the humility piece is really, really important. How virtue is practiced is as important as what it means. And that ultimately it's about habits. And that's the part that's hard. So, if you go to your physician and you want to become more fit, move more, eat less, more green, less grease. Do you have any questions?
Mhm.
It's not a knowledge thing, but it turns out it's hard to get fit and to exercise. And it's not that you don't know it. The hard part is making it a habit. And
Yep.
especially when we put you under pressure
Hmm.
and stress. So if you go from Rumi to all the service academies. So I've been to West Point and the Air Force Academy, Naval Academy. So their number one mission is better leaders for the nation and the military. So how do they define better leaders? Virtue. So why would the military practice virtue? It's about, again, making it a habit. Well, one reason is the performance benefit. So there's a guy named Mike Matthews at West Point, looked at 100 years of research. The dependent variable was academic and job performance. And 25% of the variance in performance could be explained by cognitive skills, things like IQ. 75% of the variance is non-cognitive.
Mm.
It's character. That's the part that I think most businesses are missing. It's why the military is using it. Now, on the other hand, it increases reliability under pressure, which is why the military does it. So if I don't even know what excellence means, and again, that's what virtue means, and I don't have a framework, 7 virtues, then under pressure, the variance is going to be pretty high. If at least people know what virtue is and they're trying to practice it imperfectly, to go back to Rumi, the banded behavior is going to be tighter. It's not perfect, but it's going to be a little bit tighter. And that it's a skill. So virtue is a skill and it can be learned like any skill, slowly over time, making it a habit. So what used to be hard and take a lot of effort becomes effortless. That's what a habit is,
Mhm.
that you've internalized it, but you can't push it on people. It's got to be a pull, not push.
Push. Yeah.
Um, Now, people want to do it, but you've got to figure out ways to get at it. So, one more point that Rumi is, you're right, he kind of got me rolling on this. So, one more data point. Daniel Kahneman, that you're probably quite familiar with, he argued that the single, and if people don't know who he is, the only psychologist to win a Nobel Prize in economics. And he argued that the single greatest contribution of psychology to humankind is Kurt Lewin's idea of restraining forces. Lewin's research is 80 years old. So I like stuff that's old, that's been around for a long time and proven.
Mhm.
And what Lewin's stuff demonstrated, this is kind of a fundamental piece to what I continue to do. You have driving forces pushing you this way and restraining forces putting you this way. So let's take virtue. I mean, who in the world wouldn't want to be on a team where people trust each other, they care about each other, they're fair, and they're hopeful? And who the heck wants to be on a team where people are distrustful, ruthless, cowards, and they're full of despair? So it's kind of a no-brainer. That's what you want. But the driving force to want to practice virtue, you have restraints, the pressure to perform, time limitations, a grouchy boss. And none of those things, you can't eliminate them, but you can weaken their restraints. So if I do nothing, I'm stuck. I can't change my behavior. If I can define and weaken my restraints, I start to tip it. That's a really key piece that takes you all the way from Rumi to Kurt Lewin 80 years ago that still works today.
Hmm. That's interesting. I assume you're familiar with Carol Dweck's work.
Yes,
It,
very
it, re-
much.
it reminds me of that, talking about that kind of continuum of being in a fixed mindset
Right.
over to an open and growth mindset. I talk a lot about that on the show, and it's a big part of my talk and my message is being able to shift or educate people on how to shift or the idea that you can shift.
Right.
And I think that is what I'm most interested in is that piece, those people who are in the mud, in the ruck, and they feel like they can't change. But
Right.
we've been built for change, and we can, and it just takes time, like you said, and takes effort, and we just need to start small and make those small shifts so that we can build a habit, right? And I assume you're a fan of James Clear
Yep.
and his work, the small shifts, atomic habits, and then you start to build and compound, get that compounding interest, right? And then you celebrate those wins, and then you can start seeing, the change take place. But anyhow, so yeah, thank you, Peter, for that. That was a great setup, and I do want to show, and we'll include this for those of you who are listening and not watching this on YouTube. This illustration here, Peter, if we can kind of talk through this Greek architecture, because this is the model for this book.
Right.
Kind of take us through the top with Arete. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Arete,
Arete,
which means
okay.
it means excellence.
Right. So that's the goddess of virtue, right? And
Yeah,
that's
you
the
got it.
the pediments in this kind of Doric order of Greek architecture. So if just imagine somebody's listening and kind of take us through that, briefly, cliff notes of that, because I think that to me, albeit simple, but in seeing that illustration and that Greek architecture, I was really able to internalize that.
Right. You use the key word there, internalize. I mean, that's why you can't push this stuff. It's
Right.
more caught than taught. So those virtues are known as the seven classical virtues. The word classical means these virtues cut across time and cut across borders. They're at least 3,000 years old. I think I could make a case to go back 10,000 years. So if you looked at what's interesting, this when I did a lot of work in Asia, Confucius and Aristotle were born about the same period of time. There's no evidence that they knew each other, and yet the virtues were virtually identical. And all the work I would do in Asia that or around the world, that's what was so fascinating is that these virtues are truly kind of part of every culture.
Mm.
They get expressed differently. So are there cultural differences? Of course. And that's been documented not just with going back 2,500 years, but there was a group of 55 scientists who did a thorough review of all the virtues and how universal they were. So there's science that backs up the philosophy. That's high level. To drop into the details, what's really important is unless people know what excellence means, defined by seven virtues, and until they're using common language, it's pretty hard to move the culture. So we all know that culture is more powerful than strategy. I say that as a strategist. If your culture is screwy, it won't matter how good your strategy is. You can't get it off the ground. And if the strategy is not bad, but the culture is strong, you'll be able to make movement.
Mhm.
So one way to remember these seven virtues is by catchphrases, because I can't remember paragraphs, but I can remember a catchphrase. So I'm going to just go through all seven very briefly.
That's what I was hoping. Excellent.
So for trust, the catchphrase is trust is efficient. We've all been on teams when they may be really smart people. They don't trust each other. They're going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to take a long time to get stuff done. When teams trust each other, they move really quick. They'll save you money. Second virtue, compassion. Service before self. Service before self. So the more collaborative a team is, there's overwhelming evidence that relationships need to come first and performance follows and the order matters. So that trust and compassion are kind of attached at the hip.
Mm-hmm.
Courage is doing the hard right rather than the easy wrong. Do the hard right rather than the easy wrong. Courage issues don't tend to be complicated, but they come with risk. And I already kind of know what I should be doing. I just don't know if I want to pay the price.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for any of us. But again, it can become a habit with practice.
Mm-hmm.
Justice is lived by conviction, not circumstances. And justice is by far the most complicated virtue because there's not an objective standard. But if at least I'm clear about who I want to be, guided by these virtues, independent of circumstances, I'm clear here's how I want to show up. And wisdom is strive to understand rather than be understood. There's overwhelming evidence that if someone doesn't feel heard and understood, good luck trying to change behavior. They still may not change, but you don't have a chance until they feel heard and understood. And temperance is calm is contagious. Calm is contagious. This is a tagline from the Navy SEALs that when the leader is calm, the team is calm. When the leader is ruthless, the team is ruthless. Leaders confused, teams confused. And hope is better, not bitter. So we all go through tough times. It's not a competition of how hard my blows are compared to somebody else. And so the outcome is, does it make me better or does it make me bitter?
Yeah. I love these. And in the book, you have these and the key takeaways. And I love that aspect of the book, being able to go through the chapters and just kind of have that nice little takeaway at the end. I want to talk about a couple of these, Peter. Trust. Share that shipwreck story with us. I really enjoyed that. And it just allowed me to visualize it a little bit. Obviously, I know what trust is, but I think it was just a great little story.
Yeah. So there was a school in England in 1930 that their tagline is they wanted graduates who were adequate at a dance and invaluable in a shipwreck. And it turns out that's not just a clever tagline, that there was a study done on shipwrecks between 1500 and 1800. And they actually had really good records of how many sailors died or lived. And they had their journals. So you could look at the journals to see whether virtue was present or it was absent. And the outcome of the study is when virtue was present, high probability all or most sailors would live. When virtue was absent, high probability everyone would die or most people would die. And, that's 1500 to 1800. But again, you can swing this stuff back arguably 10,000 years that Darwin kind of he wondered why are people moral? Why would you do that? And the kind of whole survival of the fittest, he never said that. There's a guy named Henry Spencer who did. So what Darwin argued for is that morality was the solution to cooperation. And evolutionary biology is about competition of what conduct would lead to sustainability. And so when he looked at tribes, other people have done the same. The tribes that cared about each other and cooperated well, not always, outcompeted tribes who were ruthless and didn't give a flip about each other. So that's a way of stringing that school from 1930, 1500 to 1800 back to evolutionary biology. This is how we're built, to cooperate. And you can't cooperate unless people are moral. The root word of morale is moral. Right. And that's the piece that I think kind of can get missed.
Right. Absolutely. So I do wonder, you mentioned this, and I was curious as I went through this list. I'm like, where's gratitude? And you do say that gratitude is by far the greatest virtue of all time. Where does that fall into this seven classical virtues?
Yeah, it's a good question. Falls under hope. Um, and here's the story behind it is if you would have asked me when I started at Parker, which kind of practice had the biggest impact on engagement, I promise my answer was not gratitude. I'm not against gratitude, but I thought it just seems a little bit fluffy.
Hmm, interesting.
Where's the evidence? I mean, it's a good thing to be gracious,
Hmm.
uh, but at my core, I look at research, and at one level, gratitude's old as dirt. So the root word of gratitude is grace, that you've been given a gift that you didn't necessarily deserve. What's new is now you bolt on social science research that started kind of in the late 90s. And the initial study was three groups. One group would write down three things they were grateful for 21 days. The second group would write down three things that ticked them off for 21 days. And the last group, the control group, we didn't do anything with them. And a study came out with clarity that the grateful group was more grateful day 22 than day zero. The miserable group was more miserable day 22 than day zero. And the control group, there was no difference. So I only give that as a backdrop is when I was looking at the research on the impact on gratitude was so powerful in terms of resilience, relationships. It just went on and on and on, engagement. So there were two researchers that had done most of the work in this field, or at least were the ones that started it. So I jumped on a plane, met with both of them, and say, "Just show me your data. I'm not going to do something at Parker without some confidence it would be effective." And the data was really compelling. So that drove me back to Parker. And now, if you ask me, as all the years I was at Parker, which of the practices had the biggest impact on engagement, it was gratitude.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, okay, what are different ways to practice gratitude as a team, as an individual?
Right.
And you want to get into that, I can share some details. But really, if you cut to the chase, with gratitude, I'm looking at what I have versus what I don't have. And it's a mind shift, and it's got a powerful impact on us.
Absolutely. I'm all about gratitude. We talk a lot about it on the show. It's infused into every speaking engagement and in my coaching work. It is, bar none, in my opinion, the easiest and simplest thing to integrate into your life that will have the most profound impact.
I think you're right, Todd.
3 minutes a day, whether that's you could bookend it, start and end, which I think has the most impact, or one or the other. For me, it's the morning. I love to start my day with prayer infused with gratitude, infused with meditation for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever I'm feeling for that particular day. And then I'm set for the day. It really sets the tone, and it's a beautiful thing. And I've seen it personally, Peter, in my business, albeit very, very small compared to what you're accustomed to, but we're still dealing with human beings.
Right.
And we see it
That
in
part's no different.
our NPS surveys year after year after year. Even with very different groups of people. I think we've been through, and you've probably seen this too. Every 5 years, I feel like there's just kind of a change in culture or people, but that has been tried and true. Feedback from employees is giving them the time and space to speak and listen to them so that they have a voice, caring, leading with empathy, and giving, them feeling value. That's one of the top questions. Do you feel valued in this organization? And we really take that to heart. So yeah, and hell, we could probably do a whole show on gratitude, Peter, and maybe we do. I feel like this is the biggest struggle with this conversation was I just want to, you have so much great information, all backed by research. And I would love to just talk for hours, honestly. I just want to talk a little bit about you. You talk a lot about, and you reference a lot in the book about the neuroscience behind all this. And I'm a big fan of that. I don't know if you're familiar with positive intelligence.
High level.
High level. Okay, good. Highly I think you would really enjoy Shirzad Shamin's book, Positive Intelligence. It's a New York Times bestseller. I'm actually a positive intelligence coach, and I'm actually a client. So I've been through the program. I'm almost at mastery level, 5 years. I've rewired my brain. You will see it on an MRI. I've definitely built that gray matter. It's a beautiful thing to be able to do that. So neuroscience is real, and it's life changing. Tell us a little bit about just your experience with neuroscience and how you infuse this into the book briefly.
Yeah. So it's kind of neuroscience caught up with Aristotle, is how I would put it. And to keep it brief, the term neuroplasticity is incredible. That we should be putting that in billboards. That as
Please.
you know, it means that my brain changes from the time I'm born to the time I croak. So just knowing that is useful. I think it's also useful to understand that this 3-pound piece of meat on top of my shoulders is an energy hog, and it uses 20% of my energy. So my brain's is actually not, it's not ethically driven. It's driven by how do I preserve energy. So my brain is just kind of going to go where I want it to go. So if I'm emphasizing social media and doing lots of clicks, then my brain starts to shut down on long-term thinking, and you get the attention span of a gnat. And if, on the other hand, I want to practice virtue, I move a little bit closer in that direction. To your point, you get a dendrite forest that's what a habit is. You've got this thick bushel of neurons that have connected, which is why it is easy for one person to do one thing and another person to do something else. So if I cut to the chase, what I pay attention to and what I practice is who I become. That if you summarized neuroscience, that's one way to do it. That it's about where I put my attention and what do I practice. And then it becomes habit. And that line of thinking, that little formula, is in alignment with what Aristotle said 2,500 years ago, that habits are about practicing excellence, that I become more just by practicing just acts. I become more courageous by practicing courageous acts. I'm not perfect at it. It's a continuum, but maybe I move a little bit closer over time.
Love it. Absolutely. And it just, again, starts with small shifts. I feel like people get overwhelmed. How am I going to achieve this? Where do I start? I can't begin. I can't do this. I'm going to fail. Just get started. The research is there. The proof is in the pudding. You will see better performance, and you will have better relationships with everybody in your life. You will be able to serve everyone in your life so much better. I absolutely love it. And I'll leave you with this in terms of positive intelligence, Peter. There is kind of one core component, which is called the SAGE perspective. And it talks about, in challenging situations, finding the gift and opportunity in every scenario, in every situation. And to me, that is really, really powerful. And I see this in the virtues, and I see this throughout your book. If we can just come into every situation with an open mind, an empty cup, right? And be open to exploring and not be judgmental, we're going to be a hell of a lot better. So anyhow, I just wanted to say that. Peter, there's another component that I really felt like needed to be in this conversation. And I took a screenshot of it, and hell, I might even frame it. The 5 enduring elements to creating a world which we want to live in. That truly resonated with me, and we're talking about trust here. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, make sure I'm kind of hitting on what you were.
And I'll kick it off. Trust in practicing virtue.
Gotcha.
Trust and gratitude.
So if I'm taking it to where you were thinking, Todd, that it starts with the common language around the virtues that if I don't even know what excellence is, good luck trying to get there. And one of the distinctions is between it's not uncommon that organizations have values and people go off into the woods. They think about what they're interested in, what they care about. It's not a bad exercise. But unless you're Aristotle, it's probably not going to result in the seven classical virtues. So, kind of starting with virtue is you've already defined excellence. Now we're struggling to figure out how to practice it. It's really critical that it's practiced intrinsically, that it's what I want to do, it's who I want to be, it's how we're trying to lead, it's how we're trying to focus as a team. That's a key piece to this, which is again back to the pull versus the push. Being strength-based, what do I do well? How do I do more of it? That is not about self-esteem. So leveraging strengths doesn't mean I ignore weakness. In fact, this is an important point. Carol Dweck and others have hit this piece. Is if you ask people, do I have to have high self-esteem in order to perform? That the order is high self-esteem, then you get performance. The answer is definitively no. That what that gets you, I feel great about my math abilities, but I can't add two and two together. You get a narcissist who feels great about themselves and they can't do squat.
Right.
So the order was wrong, is you got to flip it. You do something hard and important, and that's what results in feeling a little bit better about who we are, at least the progress that we're making. But the humility is something that I would really kind of emphasize. And the last piece is about evidence-based. So rather than making tools that are just somebody's made them up, it's a personal opinion. I like the scientific method of pre, post, control, treatment, randomization, that you've tipped things in your favor, that it's more likely to work. It's not perfect. The scientific method isn't perfect. There's always more to learn, but it's better than just making stuff up. So I'm not sure if I hit what you were thinking about, but that's one way to imagine the practice of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to run through these, and this is in the book, and I'll probably include this as a graphic when we promote this podcast, this episode. But number one, trust and practicing virtue. 2, trust and gratitude. 3, trust and reflection. Slow down. I just did a post on this the other day that basically said, slow the hell down. If we can just slow down and reflect and be present in the moment, my gosh, what we can do is going to be incredible. And trust in being engaged and enjoying the process. I talk a lot about just embracing the journey. Don't worry about the end game. Don't worry about perfection. This is an infinite game. We're just trying to get better. And then lastly, trust in creating a meaningful life, which almost always means serving others. So that was exactly that piece, Peter. That just, man, I'm like, this is the type of thing you put up on the wall in your frame, and you just look at it every day, where you have this as as a page in your journal. So it was just very powerful, and it resonated with me. So I wanted to mention that in the show.
There's something you said that I think it's worth just putting a finer point on it, is reflection. That the impact that there's overwhelming evidence that disciplined reflection increases performance. And if I don't reflect, I stagnate. And that's applying it to athletics and performance. So I'm just going to give one concrete example of what this can look like. If you have kids or a kid you care about, either one, niece, nephew, what's fascinating is these are global studies. They ask parents, okay, you got to choose. Do you want a kid of high character or a high achiever? You got to pick. Which one would you go? 90% will say, I want a kid of character. That's global study. All right. And then you ask the kid, what do your parents want? Do they want you to be a high achiever? Do they want you to be a kid of character? 90% of the kids say they want me to be an achiever. So why the disconnect? Because obviously a kid cares deeply about what their parents view. And that's where you get the kid that's full of anxiety and pressure and all of that. So, and it's not that the parents don't mean well. It's a matter of not having tools. So here's the toolkit. That the message to the kid is, look, this unconditional love stuff, you're good to go. You didn't have to do anything to earn it, and you're not going to lose it. And the point of school is not to come back as starting quarterback, first chair violinist, valedictorian. That's not the point of school. Your job is to ask 3 questions every day. Were you brave? Were you kind? Did you learn from your mistakes?
Mm.
And so typically at a dinner table, you ask a kid, what did you do today? Nothing. What did you learn today? Nothing.
Mm.
Those 3 questions start to change. You'll get an eye roll initially, but
Oh
what's
yeah.
fascinating, you can ask a 3-year-old these questions, and if it's back to these virtues are in
Mm.
us, they have to be cultivated. And from a performance point of view, when the kid is focusing, and this is true for all of us, when you focus on what you can't control, high grades, what's going to happen is your anxiety is going to go up and your performance will decline. When you look at, can I be brave, kind, learn from my mistakes, you flip it. That you're not going to drive anxiety to zero, but you're going to up performance. There's a notion in sports that amateurs focus on outcomes, professionals focus on process and character. So those 3 questions are the process and character. And that's what drives higher levels of performance. Because I can control that stuff. And that's really a key piece in performance is tell me what you can control, or you can at least influence. You can't control whether you're going to become valedictorian or starting quarterback. Doesn't mean that isn't your aspiration, but that's the byproduct.
Mm.
That the thing you control is character and process.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Wow. I love that, Peter. Some good parenting tips there. I have a 13-year-old daughter, so it can be challenging. I ask the question, how's your day, sweetie? Fine, fine, fine. Copy paste, fine. All right, I'm going to take some Peter Ray questions to her today. Let's see what my answers are.
Yeah, you'll get now at some point she's going to start asking you, so you tell me when you were kind, you were brave.
Yeah.
What mistake
Hey,
from?
all day long, all day. I'm happy to have that conversation. No, I love that. I love that. All right, Peter. So we're going to put this book away for a minute, and we have to talk about this nonprofit. So you retired recently. Congratulations. And congratulations on starting this amazing nonprofit, which will have a link in the show notes. Better humans, better performance, your life's work. Tell us about this new venture, why you established it, what you hope the outcome will be.
Yeah, I think the goal is it's evidence-based work that elite performers, whether it's a NASA or it's an athletic. I was at the Spurs games last night. The Spurs I've done some work with the Spurs. They do some remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
So the elite organizations are taking the ideas in the nonprofit and applying them because they're constantly trying to get better. But most people are unaware of what these skills are or how they can be learned. That both frustrates me and makes me want to get this stuff more democratized. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the overall objective. The punchline is, how do you help people deal with stress, pressure, adversity, and still perform well by practicing what you can control, character and relationships, teamwork, and all and purpose. It's a nonprofit because the goal is to make money to give it away. So the focus is on first generation college student scholarships.
Love that.
There may be other things I'll invest in, but that's kind of the thrust right now. And Parker was wonderful to me. They gave me freedom to take the IP from Parker, take out the Parker piece of it. That's obviously a proprietary issue, but
Mm-hmm.
offer it as something that could be available to anybody.
Yeah, that's
So if you
awesome.
break it down, it's if you've got folks on this podcast who are interested, you can do a 7-day trial to roam around the cabin and see what it looks like on the virtues and playbooks. And there's over 100 short articles. By short, I mean a page or two, activities and videos. And then if somebody wants to say this, they think it might be useful for their team, then they can get a subscription for it. So they've got access to that content. And again, after expenses, I'll use that money
Mm-hmm.
for scholarships. I've got a donor fund at the Cleveland Foundation, so that's how I sweep
Okay.
money to that.
Awesome.
They're short courses. One's defined as weekly wisdom. By short, I mean it takes about 30 minutes. It's just a one pager, 2 pages tops, where you get an overview of a content area and some activities to practice individually or as a team. And there's another group of courses that are self-paced. So New York Presbyterian is a big academic medical center in New York City. So I'm doing work with them right now using self-paced courses. So I'll just give an example to this. So we started with 90 physicians, and it's trying to improve teamwork. What's the science of teamwork? So there's 6 modules, and they'll complete those 6 modules from March. I think we started March 8. It'll conclude about June 8. And the whole goal is take these ideas and plug them into what they're going to do anyway, so that we can see if we can up the quality. And it's a very good team, but they're committed to continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
They keep looking for ways to improve the patient experience, reduce medical errors, all those kinds of outcomes that we're all interested in. So those self-paced courses are available as well on leadership. There's one on coaching, one on teamwork, and I plan to keep fleshing all those out so that the menu keeps growing.
Wow, that's awesome. Are you going to be doing some consulting as well?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing with New York Presbyterian
Okay,
right now. And
gotcha.
there's work I've done. There's a group in California, Liminal Collective. So I'm part of their team.
Okay.
We do work with San Antonio Spurs, the Air Force. So I'll continue to do that kind of work. So it's those 3 pillars of pillar number 1. If you just want to trial and play around and see if it's for
Mm-hmm.
you, that's the 7 days. And then if you want to have a short course, that's the weekly wisdom. If you want a self-paced course, which is a bigger time commitment, you've got that. And then yes, where it makes sense for some degree of consulting. So New York Presbyterian, it's what's attractive about that. I love their mission. I think the people are terrific. It's huge. So I like big, hard problems, just like Parker. How do you reach 50,000 people in 11 hospitals throughout New York City
Mm-hmm.
and look for ways to kind of keep integrating that content to them?
Now that's incredible, and I love that you're giving back. Obviously, you've had a passion for helping kind of build these young leaders. You're 29 plus years at Baldwin Wallace as a professor. So this is great that you're able to continue on with this mission and this message and this work, but also be able to give back. That's something that I aspire to as well. So it's a great example for us in terms of leaving a legacy of work, that's going to continue well beyond your years, right?
Yeah, that's where a shout out to Parker is it's a fantastic company.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a great deal. They gave me remarkable support and freedom. I couldn't be doing this work at a lot of different levels without Parker. I was treated very generously. So it's Parker that made it possible to start the nonprofit.
Yeah, gratitude.
That's right.
All right, Peter, this has been just a great, great show. Lots of wisdom here. So just in kind of ending the show here with your extensive background in academia and the corporate world, what do you see as the future of leadership? I mean, there's a lot going on right now, right? How can individuals and leaders prepare themselves for the challenges that are ahead?
Yeah, you won't be surprised by the answer, as I would start with character. That I think there's a number of reasons to start with character. One is, how do I deal with uncertainty? I can't control all the craziness in the planet, but I can control how I want to show up. And I won't show up perfectly. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make mistakes, but at least I'm clear about who I want to be. Then it's a lifelong journey to get there. So that's one. The second reason for character is the mercenary side, that 25-75 rule that I cited. A guy named James Heckman was an economist at University of Chicago, not known as a warm and fuzzy place. He won a Nobel Prize demonstrating that non-cognitive things like character were better predictors of personal success, professional success, academic success than things like standardized test scores.
Mhm.
And then the flip side is when you don't practice virtue, what happens? So one study that looked at 20,000 people over an 18-month period. Here's what's interesting. 46% of them didn't stay with the organization. 89% were let go because of reasons of character, not competence.
Mhm.
You think of all the cost of losing somebody,
Mhm.
tangible costs of what you got to pay to go recruit somebody,
Right.
the intangible costs of what they do to a team,
Yeah.
and lost time. You typically when you lose somebody, the cost to replace them is at least a third of their salary. That's concrete costs.
Yep.
You protect yourself on the upside by practicing virtue, and you protect yourself on the downside by hiring for character and training for competence. And that's not a tagline. There's a specific way that that can be done.
Mhm.
That's the missing piece, in my view, that don't get me wrong, you got to know what you're doing. So competence matters, just so I'm being very clear on
Right.
this.
Right.
And you have to have threshold competence. Just because you're a nice person, we're not going to put you in a surgical team. So you got to know what the heck you're doing. But the big differentiator is going to be character. That's the performance amplifier. That to me it's a huge opportunity for any organization that wants to get better.
Yeah. Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree, Peter. And what's interesting with everything that you said in your book, I've experienced all of it as a small business owner. The first half of my 16-year tenure as president and owner of my company, I've always felt like I've had good character and I've always been a very caring individual. But when you get into a role and you have those responsibilities, it can easily fall off the rails, right? So I guess what
Right.
I'm saying is when I didn't really uphold these virtues to the best of my ability, I made many failures. And that was very evident in the evidence of the company and not growing and not being able to retain employees. And once that switch flipped and really focused on all of these, I saw a tremendous difference. And my company is in the best position it's ever been. And I do wholeheartedly believe that it goes back to the virtues and sticking to we say our core values, but essentially those are these virtues, just maybe outlined and worded a little bit differently, and they're not just some fancy graphic on a wall. Every decision we make is based off those, and it makes things very easy in
Right.
that matter. So all that to say, I've seen it, I've lived it, and it's a beautiful place to be in. When you can actually see these virtues in place by each and every one of your employees. So it works.
Yeah. I'd here's a kind of a simple tool and a quote from Aristotle that I can make brief. So I do this routinely. This exercise I'm going to describe is in the courses that I designed. You start with a group of people or individually. Tell me a story when virtue was present or absent, and how did it impact performance? And you just put those catchphrases up there that I went through. People get it fast. So they already know that when it was absent, all kinds of bad crap occurred. When they were present, boy, the outcomes were really favorable. That's piece one. The second part is tell me habits you want to use more and habits that you want to use less. And that kind of puts you on a track to, at least I'm clear about who I'm trying to become, realizing
Yeah.
I'm never going to aspire to this stuff.
Yep.
And the last piece that might be useful is a quote from Aristotle that he wanted to lead a happy life. Well, who the heck's against that? But his definition of happiness is a little bit different than the way we tend to use it. That happiness is a byproduct of doing what is worthy. And to do what is worthy is to be a person of character. And to be a person of character is to be virtuous. Here's the punchline. To be virtuous is about habits and discipline available to us all.
That's it. We'll just end there. I could continue to go on, Peter, but I don't want to take away from that. That was beautiful. We didn't plan
Right.
this, but that was a perfect ending. Peter, this has been amazing. I have so much respect for you and what you're doing, and I'm grateful that you allowed us to have some of your time today. And I'm sure my listeners are going to feel the same. I hope we continue to have conversations. I'm going to follow, read more of your publications and articles. I love that you have this intense focus on the research and the neuroscience, which I'm very much interested in. So just thank you again for your time today. We'll have links to your books and your nonprofits in the show notes. And I'm excited for you in this new venture and look forward to seeing, where this goes.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, Todd. This is a fun discussion. You're a thoughtful person, and you've obviously thought about these questions pretty deeply. So thanks for having me be part of your podcast. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bolt Podcast. You're on an inspiring journey of growth, transformation, and joy, and I'm honored to be a part of it. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends, and consider leaving a review. It means the world to us. For show notes, resources, and to subscribe to the weekly Motivational Monday newsletter, please visit toddbirch.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media at The Bolt with Todd B for more inspiration. Remember, real change doesn't happen overnight, folks. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your growth unfolds. See you next time.